My fiancé's mother has gone off the rails. Accuses fiancé's father, her ex-husband, of choosing to have a stroke on the same day as her surgery. First, some background. My fiancé and I moved away from his hometown a little more than 2 years ago. After the move, his mother became very clingy and demanding of more communication, despite the fact that she and her son had never had a particularly emotionally close relationship. He was somewhat accommodating, but when he gave an inch she always demanded a mile more, to the point where she wanted near daily communication. He didn't enjoy this, and it really didn't match their previous relationship style. Then, last October, his sister came to visit us and she and I butted heads. The run-up to the visit was already complicated by some very demanding and controlling behavior on her part. Only a month before the visit she had insisted that they would only communicate via text moving forward. So, it was a bit of a recipe for disaster, and I was on edge from the start. My fiancé and I find her incredibly rude, abrasive, and self-centered, and her presence completely transformed his personality from fun and goofy to cold and quiet. We're typically quite affectionate and can talk all day, but with her around it felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room. After Sil-to-be's visit, my MILF-to-be and my fiancé had a confusing falling out. One day they've had a very reasonable call during which he expressed his frustrations about his sister, and the next day MIL-to-be is livid that he would ever insult or criticize his sister, and she declared them cordially estranged, her words, not mine. She specifically took issue with my fiancé's use of therapy to work through family matters, stating that she could no longer trust him because of his use of therapy in this manner, which she had done in the past, specifically to work through problems she has with her own daughter. There is so much more backstory to this, and I wish I had used this subreddit so much sooner. Over the coming months, fiancé received a few messages affirming and doubling down on the estrangement, which now extended to his sister. MIL-to-be and Sil-to-be have become incredibly enmeshed since we moved away from them, and recent events only reveal how extreme this has become. Here's where his father becomes a bit more relevant. MIL-to-be and Phil-to-be, who is a very sweet and generous man, divorced about a decade ago. Timeline is fuzzy because they didn't tell their son for at least a year after their divorce. See what I mean about the emotionally distant relationship. Phil-to-be has never let go of the relationship, as he wasn't the one who wanted the divorce, and it seemed to him like it came out of nowhere. Fiancé can see where it came from, but recent events complicate the image a bit. So, in the last year, since the estrangement began, Phil-to-be has tried many times to get my fiancé to reconcile with his mother. Now, my fiancé has been, until now, quite open to reconciliation, and has told his mother several times that she can always call and that he still loves her. Still, Phil-to-be has remained caught in MIL-to-be's web despite the divorce. She still seems to keep him hanging on, treating him like a flying monkey, and using him to get information about fiancé and I despite our requests that he not share certain things with her. She even used the proposal of having more frequent coffee dates with him to get our most recent address, despite his promise not to share. Fast forward to last week. The actual event I've been trying to set up so far. Fiancé gets a call on Thursday letting him know that Phil-to-be is in the hospital, likely having had a mini stroke. He's had 2 in the past, and MIL-to-be has breast cancer, seemingly stage 3, but we don't have many details due to estrangement. Across the days Phil-to-be was in the hospital, MIL-to-be called him multiple times demanding he stop asking their daughter, who lives relatively nearby, to help feed his cat while he's in hospital, insisting that he needs to be in an assisted living facility, and demanding that he no longer call his daughter but only text her moving forward. We have no idea if Sil-to-be knows what her mother has said. Phil-to-be has not heard from his daughter since, despite him attempting to text her. Fiancé has gone to care for his father now. Phil-to-be is home, doing well, and finally seeing the light when it comes to his ex-wife's behavior. It seems the Sil-to-be is now living with and likely providing full-time care for MIL-to-be, and MIL-to-be is attempting to totally monopolize her daughter and isolate her from her father. Resource hoarding, perhaps. So, today, fiancé calls me to say that his mother has really lost the plot, if she hadn't already. She apparently called Phil-to-be this afternoon and angrily accused him of choosing to have a stroke on the day of her breast cancer surgery. She told him that he should have just stayed home, sat down, and drank some water, implying he faked the stroke or is being dramatic about the seriousness of his condition. He also has Parkinson's, which was likely caused by his previous strokes. And, again, she doubled down on him needing to move into assisted living, even though he has seen rapid improvement since he was hospitalized last week and he very much wants to continue living independently. When he was admitted, he couldn't see properly, couldn't walk, etc. Now, he's walking up and down stairs again and is able to shower and bathe himself. He's making great strides, which is so nice to see. This woman has absolutely lost any grip she had on pretending to care about or value this man. She also insists that my fiancé is spoiled and selfish for not being there to care for his dad when the stroke first happened, despite the fact that we live hours away and he wasn't listed as an emergency contact because Siltaby insisted that only she be listed. Siltaby never visited her father in the hospital, and fiancé wasn't even called until the second day his father was in the hospital. Neither MiL or Siltaby notified him, despite their knowing and somehow expecting fiancé to be there to help, and Siltaby couldn't for obvious reasons. Anyhow, Siltaby is finally seeing the light on all of this, has told fiancé to forget reconciliation, and now they're just enjoying their time together before fiancé has to return home for work. It's really sad that it's taken a decade for Siltaby to wake up to how horribly he's been treated for all these years, but I hope that he can move forward and just enjoy the relationship he does have with his son. As for us, it's no longer cordially estranged. It's just no contact. Comment. MiL is totally off the rails on everything except assisted living for Phil, and I will explain in a minute. MiL is a narcissist who needs to be on control of everything. It seems that Sil has inherited that from MiL and together they are trying to control through bullying and guilting everyone. The best course of action is to drop the rope with them. They are unreasonable and you cannot reason with unreasonable people. So the best thing to do is to disengage rather than tolerate their abuse. There is nothing you or fiancé can do to change them, they are who they are. Stop initiating contact with them, and when they contact fiancé, he should be polite, but not tolerate abuse, even if he has to hang up. Regarding Phil, glad to hear that he is disengaging from MiL. My Phil had Parkinson's. Parkinson's is degenerative, while Phil will have periods of good control over his movements, that will decrease over time. He will build up a tolerance over time to the medications that they use to control the tremors. The medications over time can and will cause hallucinations. My Phil once called me insisting that he was in another country and needed help getting home. He truly believed it? My BIL had to call the staff at the assisted living facility where he was to have them go talk to him and calm him down. My ILS lived on their own for years, but there started to be multiple incidents. My MiL had dementia, that they couldn't handle. They refused home health aides because they didn't need help. It was a frustrating situation. Then there was an incident where Phil ended up in the hospital. That's where we all stepped in and said stop. It is not safe living with no support, you need more support. So we looked at assisted living, and I had no idea what that meant. I had only ever known the nursing homes from 40 years ago. Assisted living places were designed, thanks to the baby boomer generation, for people like my Phil and your Phil, where they are apartment-style living with 7x24 caregivers available to assist as needed. Every resident is assessed periodically for their needs so that the staff knows who needs help getting dressed or who just needs to be reminded of meal times, etc. With any assisted living facility there is always an independent living facility, sometimes in the same building but in different floors. Assisted living and independent living are apartment buildings, everyone is in a studio or one-bedroom apartment, and the building has a lot of common areas for social activities, dining room with restaurant menu type food, and activities including field trips to local points of interest, men's lunch out, etc. I would suggest that you and your fiancé need to Google a couple of local places and then go get a tour of a couple of them, and understand the costs, etc. MiL is saying it like he would be going to an old folks home. That's not these places. They are places that offer extra assistance and 7x24 assistance and lots of activities to help the residents enjoy a fulfilling life, choosing what they want to do and don't want to do. Your Phil may be able to live in the independent living with a full kitchen cooking his own meals, or he may enjoy using the dining room option for some of his meals. There are lots of different combinations of assistance or not, etc. It is better that you research ahead of time, and after you find some place or places that Phil might enjoy, you can take him on the tour. We had to make a decision in an emergency without much research. The first place was nice, but there were a couple of things my ILS didn't like. So we researched more places and eventually moved them to a place that had everything they wanted. My Phil loved going out on the men's lunch, even though he was on the assisted living floor. He was found some poker buddies living on the independent living floors for a weekly poker night without even leaving the building. Once my ILS were in assisted living, they were much happier because when they wanted to do things, it was right in the building: church services, exercise classes, doctor visits for GP and podiatrist. We went through the same kinds of discussions before we went on tours. That was a mistake because we didn't know what we didn't know. Going on the tour was very helpful to see the layout, what activities there are, the culture, etc. The tours don't cost anything but time, but they provide a lot of valuable info to help you make the best decision. I second this. It was the same for my mother. She remembered where her mom was in the 1970s, and she was reluctant, but also afraid of being alone in her house after 2 bad falls. She was an incredibly social person who was starting to become a recluse because of her fear of falling. My brothers showed her the assisted living place by the place she was rehabbing, and she instantly opted to move there. She returned to her sociable self and relatively independent. Now, I have to say my mother was in the fortunate position of being able to afford where she lived. It is not cheap. But if she had run out of her own money, my brothers and I would have made it work. So, after all this, you still want to marry into this batshit crazy circus train wreck of a family? My only advice would be to stop, re-evaluate, and listen to any open and objective third-party advice. Just think about brining kids into the circus makes my skin crawl. Maybe just hit the pause button and breathe for a minute. Fiancé should talk to his dad about a medical power of attorney. Surely your Phil, in the end, would rather his son make decisions than his daughter.